Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day. And today is a bit of a diversion because instead of talking about the people who are working so hard in the trenches to make this such a great place to live, work, and play, we're going to be visiting with my friend Laurie Jackson, who's a missionary in Western Ukraine. We'll go ahead and bring Laurie in, and then I've got something I want to say, and then we'll get the latest from her. People who have not heard our conversation in the past, no worries. We're going to rebuild what this effort is she's involved in and kind of where she comes from, because we haven't said that in a while. It's a terrific story of a person in Laurie and a team of people that she's surrounded by, helping each other survive the very difficult situation that the war between Ukraine and Russia has created for them. And she's coming to us live from Russia, from Ukraine, from Western Ukraine. So we've never mentioned the name of the place where she's located for very good reason, but she's become a good friend. And this has been too long now, Laurie, that you and I have been having these conversations, isn't it?
Absolutely. It needs to stop. I don't know what else to say. It's hard.
And so here's my thought is that, in sort of what I've said on the show before and what I've written about and have my strong belief is that whether people support or don't support this administration, one of the things that's emanating has been, we want peace. I still don't quite fully appreciate what's going on behind the scenes as it relates to this particular war. But you think about the Congo and what's happened there. You think about the Middle East, particularly as it relates to Pakistan and India and what almost happened there. And then most recently with Iran and that conflict. And now we've got a sort of at least a very significant ceasefire in Gaza. You get the sense that peace is happening. You get, as we talk about the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, the likelihood that others will be signing on and all of that. And all of these things happening while simultaneously bombs continue to drop in Ukraine and in some cases actually in Russia. And this brutal front line, this absolutely brutal front line where we hear literally thousands of young soldiers, in some cases maybe not so young because they've been brought into this war, dying every single week. Laurie, it's got to be crazy to be in your position to watch this unfold every single day and having been involved in this effort from day one.
We know lots of people on the front lines, and the more people you know on the front lines, the more people you know who are wounded and who are killed on the front. And so even just this week, one of our teammates, her group mate from college, and these are people who are very close. In colleges in Ukraine, their groups stay together. So every class, you're with the same group of people. So there are 20 people who go through all 4 years of college and the same. So you get very close to this community, right? And yesterday, that one of her group members was murdered along the front.
Yeah, that's so hard to hear. So hard to hear. I've noticed a little bit of a delay, but typically when you and I are talking, the Wi-Fi is even better than when I'm talking to a mayor in a city next door to where I'm sitting. So you just never know what we're going to get. So usually the connection with Laurie is terrific. But Laurie, let's for people who have not heard us talk before, and since we've got some time together today, why don't you remind people, you're from Florida, but you came there and you never left. You're an independent missionary, and now, God, the Lord put you in an amazing spot. There's a lot of divine intervention in your story, but why don't you kind of share your story?
Absolutely. I am, like you said, from Florida. I grew up there, lived in Tallahassee my whole life until I ended up in Ukraine. And that was 20 years ago, almost exactly. And so I spent a lot of time here, happened to be in Kyiv before the full-scale invasion. And so when the full-scale invasion happened, some friends and I sat in the car and started heading west, like just for safety purposes, and got to a point where we ended up in a hotel for the night. Men at that point weren't allowed to cross the border, and so one of my friends was a male, and his wife was with us, and he said, "I'll take you to the border." And Lisa and I said, "No, let's spend the night, and we'll see like what to do next." So we spent one night in this hotel that I'm sitting in now. And the next morning we woke up and we said, "Okay, what are we doing?" And Lisa said, "I don't want to leave Sasha." And I said, "I don't want to leave Ukraine." And we said, "Okay, then what are we doing?" And we decided that we had enough funds at the moment to rent this hotel for, I think we said 2 weeks in the beginning. And made a group chat and said, if anyone needs a place to be, like, this is where we are. And people started coming. And on the flip side, friends and family from the States were messaging me saying, "How are you? How can we help?" And I said, "This is where we are." And they joined in and started offering their help. And so now here we are 3 years later. We run this hotel. It's housing, I think right now, about 50 internally displaced people. And then we also began running retreats for families of Ukraine's fallen soldiers, so widows and their kids come and spend a week of rehabilitation with us. We have psychologists who join in and help with the mental health side of things, because none of us are professionals. None of us were doing this before the full scale invasion. And so we look for help wherever we can. We named our organization UA Ants. UA is the abbreviation for Ukraine, and ants because when an anthill gets kicked, right, what happens? All the ants scatter and immediately begin rebuilding. And so our hope is, even as Russia continues to attack, to be rebuilding and to be helping strengthen families and rebuild the future for Ukraine.
It's amazing what you guys have done. Laurie, I finished a book actually, and we're in the editing process now. It was a book that started about what I learned about life in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, but it evolved to include many stories that I've had either through my professional life or through this show. Many stories of people overcoming some of life's hardest moments. And, it's interesting. I should consider including your story and some aspect of your story in my book, because this is a global conversation, this discussion about hope, and what we learn from life's hardest moments. But if I had to think back about the effort of UA Ants, I would say there's a prevailing, like, clarion call within your efforts to help people see hope in spite of very, very challenging situations. But that's true, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We talk about hope and healing all the time amongst ourselves, and the things that we are involved in doing is to see this like restoration of a people and to offer people hope in the moment, right? Because sometimes it looks like there isn't any, and sometimes we have to remind ourselves that there is. But there definitely is, and we see moments of this, especially if we talk about our retreats. For widows and their children. They come to us defeated and unsure of what happens next, right? How do I move on? I don't want to move on, right? And then by the end of the week, they're ready, and you see this light like change in their eyes, and we can't not keep doing it because the need is there, and as terrible and awful as it is. And it's hard for us too to continually hear these stories and tragedies, right, that are happening around us. And at the same time, to be able to bring some sort of light, some sort of hope into that is what keeps us going.
It is. That's so interesting that, I will consider adding a story about your efforts, because what I believe, and the story you just told, and I've seen it with my own eyes in the wake of Katrina and other challenges along the way in my own life, where I face some very challenging moments. that there is always a spark of hope there. I don't care how bad it is. If you're alive and you're breathing,
Mm-hmm.
there's a spark of hope, and it's about finding that. And what sounds to me like what you're doing, especially in this week-long session that you're having with widows and their families, is this notion of helping them find that spark. And then once they do, it's just an ember, and it can become a blaze. But may need a little help to stoke it and whatever. But when you see that light, when you see that ember light, when you see people find their hope, it's an amazing thing, man. Listen, we're at the end of the segment. When we come back on the other side, I'll give you an opportunity to chat just a bit more about that. But we're visiting with Laurie Jackson, who's an independent missionary in Ukraine, and she's coming to us from Ukraine. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. And I want to thank Kyle, who had to listen to a long conversation during the break with my friend Laurie Jackson, an independent missionary from Ukraine. But I believe I have a strong faith. I'm a Catholic. I have a very strong faith. And I believe there are moments of divine intervention. And most of my listeners know about the book that I'm writing because I've talked about it. And she and I were talking during the break. It's divine intervention that we got into that conversation about hope, and that a story related to Laurie's efforts in Ukraine will make its way into my book. But so much of what I've written about, the importance of your family, the importance of your extended village, the importance of making pain your purpose and embracing your scars and finding your internal spark, all these things that I write about in my book, is literally what the UAANS is doing. You live for this. I mean, it just provides a framework to describe what this volunteer, wonderful effort that you're involved with in Ukraine, I mean, could happen at any community in Mississippi or any community in America. It tells a story about how people help each other. That's what you're doing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I had just gone into the city to pick up some things for our shelter, and took one of our teammates with me, and she and I were talking about how sometimes people come and talk about, like, oh, everything you're doing is so wonderful, and we tell them, no, like, it's what we should all be doing. Like, this is life works. And so listening to you talk about your book, and also another thing we were talking about was we have an upcoming retreat for veterans and their families. And we were talking about how our goal with these retreats, our veterans in Ukraine are generally very young men. They're not veterans because they got through, right? They're veterans because they were wounded and discharged because of being wounded. And so our goals there is for strengthening family and creating community. And so it's exactly what you're talking about, and absolutely divine intervention.
Storms come in so many different, ways. There are big storms like a war, like Katrina. There are personal storms, and there's everything in between. But, life is about storms. I mean, if you live long enough, you will experience storms. There's just no way to avoid them. Me personally, what facing storms for me has been, and as certainly as I've grown older, has been about embracing my faith more, and going through storms with faith is extremely helpful. And one of the things that's always been appealing to me about our conversations is that when you and I have talked about religion and the role religion plays in the Ukraine culture, is Christian. It's a Christian belief, very similar to what we would believe here in coastal Mississippi. In fact, you said when we visited with Sean Tyndall before the show started that that Ukraine is very much like the South. The way that I think is the way you said it, but I feel a very strong kinship with you guys. And I've been able to develop that through all these conversations that you and I have been engaged with. But that's true, isn't it?
It's true. Ukrainians are very community oriented. They very much are connected. And it's interesting because when even 20 years just moved here, right? You came in and you still felt a very Soviet feel in a lot of interactions that were surface level. But as soon as you talked to someone, as soon as I don't know, you walked into the store and said hello, there's already this like we're together, we're in this together. And I feel like that's only been magnified by the difficulties that we've faced together. And I think that going into the future, as terrible as the situation is right now, I feel like going into the future, the things we go to together in us, and if we let them, there are moments
Yeah.
when we don't, but if we let them, and Ukrainians are really good at letting them. And we have a community here, and we have a church group that meets on Sunday evenings, and one of our little old ladies walks in with her Bible, and it's all written in, and there are bookmarks everywhere, and it's just incredible to see this like desire to be together in the things that we do. Our at our shelter, they help us. We send out food parcels every month to other internally displaced people, and everyone who lives in our shelter comes together to help make that happen. And so people in need themselves are helping other people in need, and we just understand that this is community. This is how life works.
It is something to watch. Again, it's very similar to what we have experienced here in coastal Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. So many of the same kinds of things. But as as I said on the first show, and you and I were together, and I'll say it again today, it's like when Katrina came and went, it did massive amounts of damage and took so many lives in a 12-hour period. Just imagine if Katrina came and didn't leave. That's what you've experienced in Ukraine. I'm curious about, as you hear the news, Laurie, the complexion of this war has changed in so many different ways. Indiscriminate bombing, lots of Russian bombing in residential areas, and all of that. It comes in waves. And then more recently, you're beginning to read news reports of some 50,000 soldiers amassing on the border. When you hear all of that, how does that manifest itself on a day-to-day basis in the world that y'all are in?
Okay, so first of all, in 2014, when the war first began, I was living in Lugansk, which is far eastern Ukraine. It's occupied territory currently and has been since summer of 2014. And I understood during that time, be very careful what news you're listening to, and do your research, talk to people on the ground. And because all news agencies that I've heard, that I've seen, have an angle. And sometimes they tell you the truth, and sometimes they tell you what they want you to hear. And it might be a portion, but it's not necessarily the full truth. And so as far as news from the ground here, I try to get that firsthand as much as possible. Obviously, there are things I won't know. There are things they're not releasing, right? For good reason. But we absolutely wake up every morning and check our phones to see where things have hit, and start asking each other, did you hear, did you see? Because the first you get, there were hits in what city, right? But they're not giving exact locations. So word of mouth is how we're communicating about specific places.
Well,
but all of us have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that a lot of the people that you come in contact with, I mean, it's again, it's like after a hurricane. You imagine everything you did before the storm, suddenly you're not doing those things anymore. You might be an entrepreneur or a graphic artist or any number of others that I've had the opportunity to meet on this show as a result of my conversations with Laurie. And suddenly they're either involved in an effort like this, or they're now on the front line doing something, or involved in a military action in some way or another. So it's a very unfortunate situation. But as a result of that, the tentacles of potential communication are everywhere. The other thing you guys did, you bought a couple of vans that you've used for a lot of different purposes, transporting families and whatever else, but also in providing needed resources to, even in some cases, the front line, the soldiers that needed help.
Mhm.
So, I mean, when you think about the risk that those drivers have taken and that your effort has been involved in, wow, it's pretty risky business you've been involved in, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But we can't not do what we're doing, right? It's not somebody on the front, right? It's our brother, it's our husband, it's our nephew, our best friend, our group mate from college, and so we can't not help our friends and family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so one of these vans we actually gave to our one of our teammates. Her younger brother is on the front, and so we gave his unit one of our vans. We repainted it. And, it was tomato, and it was red, and then it was green, right, to be able to blend in. And then they were shooting at the green vans, so we painted it black.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so we have to help however we can. Um,
So yeah, this unofficial news network that you referred to, you're able to gather a lot of information, aren't you?
we know a lot, yeah.
Wow, that's the way it is in Ukraine, though, isn't it? I mean, people just they know, and it's like if we had family members that were been shipped off to a front line somewhere, we're going to be heavily engaged in understanding what their situation is. And it's
Absolutely.
every hour on the hour worrying about it, isn't it?
Hmm. Oh, 110%. Like you wake up every morning and the first thing we do is check our phones and check in with the people we love. And I woke up to a nightmare recently, and I
Hey,
knew, like,
hold
I
your.
don't dream very often.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
wait. We'll come back to that because we're at the end of the segment. We're visiting with Laurie Jackson, an independent missionary from Ukraine, who has become a friend over the last 3 sad years. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. We're visiting with my friend Laurie Jackson, who's an independent missionary in Ukraine. She's actually coming to us from Western Ukraine. And, every time we're together, I have no idea where the conversation is going to go. It's just great to check in. The prevailing sentiment you will get, though, from our conversation is that the people of Ukraine are very much like the people of Mississippi. They care about their communities. They care about their families. They're Christian in many cases. And they're scared to death, and they wish this war would come to an end. That is for sure. Okay, so when we went to break, though, Laura, you were mentioning that you had a nightmare. So I looked and there were 19 seconds left in the segment. I didn't want you to tell us your story and have to stop it. So pick it up from there.
Yeah, you had just mentioned this like continual hurricane, if we want to call it that, right? That we're living in. Only worse because it's people on people. It's not like nature on people, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, so I don't dream very often. I don't remember my dreams, and one day this week, I woke up to a dream that the anti-aircraft artillery was firing. And it's a sound that I know. I've heard it many times, but it doesn't happen in our area. And so when I first woke up, I couldn't understand, like, is this real life? Where am I? Like, what's going on? And finally, I realized, like, no, it's okay. You're here. You're safe. And so my immediate reaction, right, is pick up the phone, check on your friends, make sure everyone's okay. And it was the night, probably of the worst attack in recent times. And so I think sometimes we just know, we like have these feelings. And I had mentioned my friend's group mate who was killed. One of the kids, I actually had kids who graduated from orphanages who were living with me for a while. And in Kyiv, I had a young man who lived with me for about 2 years, I think, and he's been on the front and is currently missing in action. And so, like, it's just constant. And these are my stories, right? Like my little stories, and everyone has these stories, right? And you're right, it doesn't end. But as we talked about at the beginning, there's always hope, and so we pray every for Slavic who is missing. We think about, okay, like how can we help this friend's group mate's family, right? They're here, they're grieving. They may not have a support system around them. What can we bring in to be part of the answer to all the questions that are happening during our retreats, both for veterans and their families and for families of our fallen defenders. We have every morning, well, all of Ukraine actually every morning has a moment of silence at 9 a.m. For the people on the front, for those who are fallen. And the whole country stops. And it's just this incredible moment of, we were talking about unity, right? And so after our moment of silence at our retreats, we pray for Ukraine, and we open our Bible and we open a psalm and we say, when you don't know what to pray, God gave us something to pray. And these psalms were written by David during a time of war, for a time of war. And so together we read these psalms and we cry out to the Lord, and together we walk through all the storms, and we see God's faithfulness. We see his hope. We see miracles happen. We have plenty of friends who could have been killed and for some reason are still here. And we're so thankful for those moments.
Yeah, Laurie, my wife and I last year went through the process of reading the entire Bible in a year. And it was as an adult, again, if you don't use it, you lose it, even though you go to church and you hear these scriptures. To see it in one daily dose over the course of 365 days, and to see how all the bits and pieces fit together. And the particular one that we did was sort of narrated by a Catholic priest. And what was very unique about it is that it was given to you in chronological order so that you could follow it, because if you were to read it by book, it jumps around in time and it's hard to follow. And so it's given to you in chronological order. And my wife and I, if there was a profound thing that we kept going back to, aside from just the lessons and the learnings and the inspiration that we were getting, was that throughout all of that time, the amount of strife and pain and war and conflict and all of that, it's always been part of the human experience, to be honest. And what we've learned from that, and the role that faith plays in all of that. You just alluded to it just then. My wife, Ann, was touched by it so much that she decided to do it again. And she's going through the whole process again. And it's amazing to watch it. I mean, you do it in a year, and some days you're more attentive than other days. And so if you do it a second time, which is the way she explains it, you're maybe hearing some things that feel like you're hearing it for the first time or reading it for the first time, but it's so much a part of it. And having sort of that ability to understand that within the context of what Ukraine is going through, it really helps. It really is. There's a wonderful, as I say, wonderful, but that's the faith aspect of finding hope and reassurance. You see that, don't you?
Oh, for sure. I would say probably most clearly in our retreats, mostly for women and children of our fallen defenders. They come one way and they leave another, and being able to help. And like I mentioned, that we have our psychologists who come alongside us, right? Or I mentioned that we read the Psalms. And so what are we doing? We're giving them tools that maybe aren't for everyone, but they're able to take what's good for them and what works for them, and take that home with them. We're creating community, right, among themselves. So there's someone who understands what we're going through. And they take that home with them, and they stay connected in group chats. They meet up. They go have coffee together. They visit each other, and all these things help us to have that hope and learn what it means. A lot of our women say either I lost my faith, right, because my question to God is, why would you let this happen, right? Why would you let this happen to me? And we can't answer that question. But we can offer a place where it's safe to ask it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And more recently with our veterans and their families. So we had one retreat for them last December. It was kind of our pilot, like, what are we doing with this retreat? And now we're about to start a season for more retreats of this kind. And then a whole different, it's kind of similar in the things that we want to offer, but at the same time here, there's so much hope because dad is home, because the family is together. And so what does that look like going forward? And
Yeah.
also like sowing this like faith and hope for life back into families and communities
So
around
Lauren,
us.
what's so powerful about what you just said is that we have had a lot of discussions here in coastal Mississippi, and I've also written about it. A real challenge with teen suicide. In fact, we had a string of teen suicides in Jackson County, and this group out of Utah, it's in over 1,000 schools across America. Now they've implemented it in I think every school in Jackson County. But it's Hope Squad, and then what it is a peer-to-peer group where they teach. What they do is they do a survey of all the kids, and they find out which kids are looked up to, the most empathetic kids, and then those kids become part of what they call the Hope Squad. And this is a group that the kids can go to and have peer-to-peer discussions. And the Hope Squad members are taught, if a kid's having issues, they're taught to be able to counsel that child to go to get help in very specific ways. And where they have Hope Squad in schools, they have really dramatically reduced the number of teen suicides. And then I also think about the number of veterans, the young veterans in America who this incredibly high rate of suicides themselves. And again, the same kind of thing is that this feeling of whether it's kids not feeling heard, and not feeling connection. And then of course, the role social media plays to make that worse. And then, this notion around perfectionism and having to kind of be somebody they're not, and wrestling with that. And then what veterans are going through, re-entering into the life and the difficulties of that. I mean, both of these issues, incidentally, I talk about in my book. But do you guys think about the same kind of things in your work?
Oh, for sure. And especially if we're talking about veterans and what it looks like to get back to real life, or even if we're talking about our military, active duty, they get very little time off. We offer military families to come visit and stay in a hotel near us. For a week during their time off, and so a lot of times we'll have 3 or 4 families visiting, but and most of them are coming for their first time off in the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And I just can't even imagine this, but a lot of them will tell us, "Thank you for bringing us here," because when we go home, life is different. And we're together, but we're not together.
Yeah, we're meeting with Laurie Jackson from Ukraine. We'll come back for the final segment after this break. We'll see you shortly. What a show, man. Every time I'm spending time with my friend Laurie Jackson, an independent missionary doing incredible work to help families and soldiers and widows and children and a wide range of people in this wonderful effort, UA Ants, that was literally born as a thought by people who care, people who are part of her village, the way I would talk about it. I describe a tribe, incidentally, Laurie Jackson, as your immediate family and your closest friends. We all had that, But then there's this next layer, and that's the village. That's the people that you interact with, that you might help from time to time. They might help you from time to time. But when there's a really tough moment, the village are the ones you end up leaning on. I mean, you certainly lean on your family and your closest friends, but the village, the larger village, is critical. And in the case of where you are with and how UA Ants was born, it's classic village, about these people coming together with these different kinds of relationships and finding ways to help, and never being, it's not like you have a strategic plan saying, here's what we're going to do. because you're in a war scenario. You get thrown new challenges almost every day, and you have to be willing to adjust and whatever. But even the way you came to lease long term this hotel that you stayed in one night, and then ultimately you end up there for a long period of time. It's amazing to see what happens when a village comes together when people want to help each other, isn't it?
Absolutely. My village grew infinitely, and some people who had been on the outlines of my village became like closer in, right? And so we were laughing today in my phone. Our friend Valera, who actually is a very close friend now, he's one of our team members and super active in everything that we're doing, and he's written in my phone as Valera, Mogdich's friend. And Mogdich is my friend that I lived with, who's been on the front since the very beginning. And we just joke now that Valera and I are so close, but in my phone, he still stays, right? The name that he had when he was on the outlines. And another friend, his name also is Pasha Chef from Uzhgorod, because when I used to do ministry with Roma people, we would come to Western Ukraine, and this friend of a friend would help do menus for us because he was a chef and he knew how to count the food right. And so my village has just grown, and my village has grown closer. And I think that's what happens in times of hardship. We look to each other.
Your village has become your tribe.
Oh, yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it amazing? It's amazing how, and what you're learning about the power of the human spirit, in some cases, some of the toughest situations, the power and resiliency of the human spirit is, I bet you're awestruck at times.
It's incredible the things that we live through, and if we don't let them destroy us, the way that we can come through them together, and like very much this phoenix picture, right? Even in, maybe especially in the little things. We have kids, right, in our shelter, and they just bring light and life. Recently, one of our residents gave birth and brought home this tiny baby, right? And in the middle of war, like these moments are so important. One of our residents' cat ran away this week, and we were all going out every day, like looking for it and praying that God would bring this cat home. And this morning at 3 a.m., the cat comes home, right? I think that the little things really are the big things.
I remember in college when I read Nietzsche for the first time and grasped the power and depth of that which does not kill me makes me stronger. And of course, when I certainly felt it and whatever, it wasn't until I got older in life and experienced challenges and so on that I came to appreciate what that really means. I mean, I understand today what that really means. I don't know your situation because I'm not there. I've never been in a war before. I can't even imagine what you're going through. I really can't. Katrina was a form of a war, but as you pointed out, it was a natural disaster that happened in 12 hours, not human being against human being. When you look at it at that level, it's almost hard to get your head around it. Do you, when you think about the war, are you able to explain it to yourself? Why is it even happening?
For me, it's happening because someone wants something that's not theirs, because there's a power play, because there's greed, because there's pride. And so for me, it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Laura, you inspire me. God bless you. I'm so happy that Michelle introduced us so that I could, in my small, tiny little way on my show, bring attention to the fact that you guys are us and we are you. And
absolutely.
that's It's a small world. I mean, you and I have talked about that many times. You're all the way around the world, but it's like you're next door. You could be next door, and the people that you've introduced me to could be next door. And I mean, what you've done to inspire us is incredible. I wish you weren't put in the position to do that, but God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. It's always an honor and a blessing to spend time with you. Thank you for becoming part of our village.
You bet. It's been a pleasure. It's been Laurie Jackson from Ukraine. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.